The remake seems to be big business right now, and it doesn't look like it's slowing down anytime soon. But as we explored in part 1 of this look into the history of the remake, it is nothing new. In fact, remakes have been part of cinema since its earliest days. Today I want to dig a little deeper into the blurred lines of what a remake really is, and explore the other reasons that films get made again and again. Hi, I am Trev and you are watching WN Movie Talk. Make sure to like and subscribe for more interesting movie analysis and discussion, and don't forget to check out WN Movie Talk podcast, available on all good podcast platforms for even deeper dives into film history, theory and analysis. This is part 2 of our history of the remake series. If you missed part 1, then you'll find a link in the video description below. In the last episode we saw how the remake is a recurring presence in film history, shaped by cultural shifts and evolving technology. But it's not always technology that brings about the remake. Remakes can often emerge from something as simple as a filmmaker's own desire to put their unique stamp on a classic movie, interpreting the original in a way that reflects their own voice and themes. In 2004, the Coen brothers released their own version of The Ladykillers. They took the 1955 British Ealing Studios comedy starring Peter Sellers and Alec Guinness, and they injected it with their signature blend of dark humour, quirky characters and absurdity. With its tale of a criminal plot going awry, it easily fit within their own back catalogue of movies. Nora Ephron's You've Got Mail from 1998 stars Tom Hanks and Meg Ryan, and is a remake of the 1940 film The Shop Around the Corner, which starred James Stewart and Margaret Sullivan. This is another example of a director reshaping a beloved classic to suit their own style. Ephron, who made a name for herself by penning Rob Reiner's When Harry Met Sally from 1989, as well as 1993's Sleepless in Seattle, which she also directed, takes the essence of this original 1940s classic, two people falling in love through letters whilst unknowingly working as rivals in the same industry, and updates it for the modern age. With a New York setting, the rise of the internet, Ephron's version still carries the charm of the original, but with her own witty, warm touch. But the remake isn't always exclusive to Hollywood movies being remade for contemporary audiences. Very often the films we love and watch are lifted from other cultures. The 1980s and 1990s saw several comedies and romantic films that were remakes of foreign movies. One notable example is Three Men and a Baby from 1987, a remake of the French film Trois Hommes et un Enfant from 1985. The American version retained the heartwarming humour and premise of the three bachelors caring for an infant, but infused it with Hollywood's broader comedic approach and star power, which made it a solid box office hit. In 1989, The Three Fugitives was a remake of the French film Les Fugitifs from 1986. Both versions were directed by Francis Verber. And did you know that James Cameron's 1994 high-octane action comedy True Lies, starring Arnold Schwarzenegger and Jamie Lee Curtis, was based on the French film Le Total from 1991. While the original was a modest comedic thriller, James Cameron's remake amped up the action and spectacle, turning it into a quintessentially American blockbuster. The Departed in 2006, starring Leonardo DiCaprio, Matt Damon and Jack Nicholson, was Martin Scorsese's US remake of the 2002 Hong Kong film Infernal Affairs. While Infernal Affairs focuses on the cat and mouse game between a mole in the police and a mole in the mob, Scorsese's The Departed transplants the story to Boston and incorporates the city's unique socio-political landscape, particularly the Irish-American mob and their ties to local politics. Many foreign horror films have frequently been remade by Hollywood, with results that vary from highly effective to incredibly lacklustre. These remakes often aim to introduce acclaimed international stories to a broader English-speaking audience, but they can also lose the cultural nuances and atmospheric tension that made the originals so impactful. Successful adaptations like The Ring 2002, based on Japan's Ringu, managed to retain much of the original's dread while adapting its themes to resonate with Western audiences. But there is usually something missing in the translation. In Ringu, the pirate copied VHS tape that curses those who watch it was made up of haunting, disturbing and indecipherable imagery. The video doing the rounds in the American version is of such high quality that it doesn't have the same effect. Similarly, Let Me In 2010 is a remake of Sweden's Let the Right One In. The Swedish film's restrained, almost poetic approach to storytelling allowed its themes of loneliness, love and monstrosity to resonate deeply without overt explanation or embellishment. In contrast, the remake occasionally over-explains or dramatises key moments, making them feel more conventional and less enigmatic. Let me know in the comments below which you think the best and worst Western remakes of foreign films are. Another influence of the remake is that of an adaptation. Adaptations tend to be more accepted and acceptable. Film versions of historical and literary classics such as Hamlet or Romeo and Juliet have been made many times over, as have many of the Jane Austen classics. Or how about Little Women, which was adapted for the 7th time in 2019 by Greta Gerwig. And let's not forget Dickens' Yuletide classic, A Christmas Carol, personal favourite of mine, which has seen so many remakes that it's become impossible to count. These still continue to draw in audiences, and they tend to be good earners with each new adaptation. But now let's look at the adaptation from another angle. If Jaws or The Exorcist or The Godfather were to be remade, audiences of the original movies would be up in arms. They'd still go and watch them, but they'd be angry about doing so. But why? These are still adaptations of novels. In fact, most films, including 80% of the films mentioned in this video so far, are adaptations of novels. Currently, Warner Brothers and HBO are in the pre-production stages of a new Harry Potter series, which many consider too early to do a remake of the beloved film series. But can it really be considered a remake of the movies or another adaptation of the J.K. Rowling novels? William Friedkin's Sorcerer from 1977 is often discussed in relation to the 1953 French film The Wages of Fear. It's often referred to as its American remake. But Friedkin himself argued that it was more of an adaptation than a straightforward remake. Both films are based on the same source material, the novel. More recently, movies such as Denis Villeneuve's Dune 2021 and its 2024 sequel are less likely to be considered as a remake of the lifeless and almost unwatchable David Lynch version from 1984, and are more likely to be considered as the long-awaited adaptation that Frank Herbert's book series finally deserves. But what about the adaptation or remake of the TV series into the movie formula? Initially, films and TV were seen as separate forms of entertainment, but over time the growing popularity of television and its iconic shows made a natural source for film adaptations. Star Trek The Motion Picture 1979 stands out as a landmark project, as it was one of the first times a beloved TV show was transformed into a blockbuster movie franchise. But surely the most notable adaptation from small screen to the large has got to be the Mission Impossible series starring Tom Cruise. The original show ran for 7 years, from 1966 to 1973. The movie series, which began in 1996, has now been running for 28 years and still shows no sign of slowing. More often than not in this modern era though, the remake does seem to very often be nothing more than a cash cow, milking strained franchises for all that they're worth. They are, after all, an easy bet at the box office, intrigued audiences lured in by the temptation of nostalgia, but ultimately faced with an empty, soulless version of something that was once deemed unique and inventive. Let's use 1997's American Werewolf in Paris as our first example. An American Werewolf in Paris failed to live up to the cult status of An American Werewolf in London due to the poor execution and lack of the original's charm. The 1997 sequel relied heavily on subpar CGI for its werewolf transformations, which paled in comparison to the groundbreaking and painful looking practical effects of its original. An American Werewolf in Paris became a soon forgettable entry that couldn't replicate or reinvent what made the original so beloved. But that being said, even Landis's own Blues Brothers 2000 was soon forgotten. Blues Brothers 2000 failed largely because it couldn't recapture the magic of the original. The 1980 film was a perfect blend of music, comedy and chaotic action, driven by the chemistry between John Belushi and Dan Aykroyd. The sequel, however, lacked Belushi's irreplaceable presence, and while John Goodman and the rest of the cast tried to fill the void, the dynamic just wasn't the same. The film leaned heavily on nostalgia without offering anything new. Robocop was such a massive hit when it was first released. It created a phenomenon that caught audiences off guard. The original movie, directed by Paul Verhoeven, tapped into the zeitgeist of the 1980s. The film used satire and dark humour to critique these issues. It was notorious for its extreme violence, which became one of the film's defining features. Its groundbreaking visual effects and the iconic design of Robocop and Ed 209 all contributed to its cult status and appeal to audiences seeking something edgier than the typical Hollywood action fare of the time. The 2014 version felt more like a generic action movie, failed to capture the same satirical edge and cultural relevance as the original. One of the key differences between the two films is the tone. With its PG-13 rating, it ultimately diluted the unique qualities that made Robocop a cult classic. The violence in the remake was less graphic, and the movie shifted its focus to Robocop's emotional struggle with his humanity, which, while still a core theme of the original film, in the new film replaced the violence and the brutality. This was Robocop with feelings and a hand remaining for him to pet his son. This is the difference between a film being made by a writer with a fresh idea and a director with a unique vision, compared to a film being created by a group of suits sat around a boardroom aiming to make money rather than an interesting movie. This happens more and more often these days, and these movies may make their money back, but with every failed attempt only detracts from the essence and appeal of the original movies. See Star Wars in its current form. And directors and creators of original content are at this revival too. Let's take a look at Ridley Scott, bringing us an abysmal return to the Alien franchise with Prometheus and Alien Covenant. Two movies with absolutely horrendous scripts that only destroyed the chilling mystery of the original movies. However, that being said, I have watched and absolutely loved Tim Burton's 2024 smash hit Beetlejuice, which I didn't want to watch. Beetlejuice succeeded where other sequels and remakes often fail, because it retained the essence of the original movie while expanding on its world in meaningful ways. It was clearly Tim Burton's vision once again. His comedic tone and visual style was here in abundance. The film brought back Michael Keaton in his iconic role as Beetlejuice, ensuring the sequel maintained the original's distinct tone and style, and the comedic performances of Catherine O'Hara, Justin Theroux and Willem Dafoe were brought together in an original story in the familiar world of the original movie without having to be a carbon copy of it. Okay, so there are some moments in there that are a little nostalgia baiting, but for the best part, the film was a great return to Tim Burton's world. And so, whilst we like to believe that we've had enough of the remake and the relaunch, there will always be an audience for them. Some will work, some will fail, but they are going to be around for a good while yet.